welcome to another episode of Ink Medicine. Here with me, actually here at their place, I am with my fairy godchild, Ale. Ale, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Ale. My pronouns are she, her, or really anything in a kind, loving direction I'll honestly respond to. So if you say, hey, you there, and it's a kind and loving, I'll probably turn around.
Yeah.
I was raised in the 90s.
Where were you raised?
I was raised a little bit all over the world. So I was originally born in Cucuta, Colombia, which is right on the border of Venezuela and Colombia. And then I lived in Italy for a good while. And then I lived in France, more specifically in Fontainebleau with my grandparents. And I just kind of bounced around. I really had a lot of good opportunities to be able to see a lot of parts of the world when I was younger, which I'm absolutely grateful for.
Do you speak all of those languages?
I do. My French is much rustier. I mean, I had French roommates when I was in college as well, which kind of helped me upkeep it when I moved here to California. And I speak Spanish and Italian. And I used to speak a lot more German, but I speak a little bit of German now. I had to learn all those languages for what I was doing throughout my high school life.
What were you doing?
I was an opera singer. I was a professional opera singer for 9 years, which was absolutely amazing. And I had to learn all those languages to sing in those languages. It was really important at the time that the person who was running my company, that we had an understanding not only of the music that we were making and representing, but also that we understood the cultures that we were going to be representing while we made our music. And so we would travel to those places and we'd integrate ourselves in those spaces and we'd learn the languages. And I feel really lucky that I was able to do that. Also, I get really nervous when people ask me about it because I haven't been able to practice it as much. I've always been able to practice Italian and Spanish because they were spoken in my home growing up, but French and German was a little bit harder for me to keep up because the only other people that I knew that spoke them were the people in my company at the time, just because also I wouldn't say I was sheltered, but I didn't get a lot of time with other people, which kind of made it a little bit difficult to find friends outside of those places, right? So we would travel to Germany, but I would be in rehearsals pretty much all day long, and we'd get out about 11:30 at night, and at that point, you're tired, you're hungry, and you just really want to go to sleep. Jet lag is kicking in. Also, you have to wake up super early in order to start preparing your body for the next day. So I didn't get the opportunity to practice those things outside of the bounds of the people in my company.
That's wild. How did you get parenting in your life?
Yeah, I mean, so
you were a child traveling.
I lived with my grandparents who lived in Fontainebleau. They originally lived in Calabria in Italy, and they traveled with me because both of my parents were moving to the United States at the time because my dad had gotten a new job and my mom really wanted to go back to school, and very specifically the school that she went to when she was younger, which was Georgetown University. So they were both moving, and it was actually really difficult for my dad as well as my mom, but way harder on my dad, I would say. For him, family was everything, right? We lived in Italy and in Colombia because that's where his family was. And the fact that he would be in any way, shape, or form leaving his child was really difficult. So when I would come to visit, I'd come and visit for 2-month periods of time, right? When we would take breaks from traveling and from tour, which would be, by the way, in entirely random times of the year. And I would always get into the car and I would just jump in the car and he'd act like nothing happened during that time. So oh, we're going to go home and, your sister's watching TV on the couch and Ao's out with his friends and, do you want to go get a bagel? Should we go get a bagel? And, for a very long time.
You weren't gone for months at a time.
Yeah.
He would basically just kind of pretend like he's picking up from school or something.
Yeah, exactly. And it was also really interesting because he was always so deeply proud of my musical talents and my voice. And anytime I would write music, and growing up, he was, the one that placed me in my music classes to begin with. And he was very, very supportive. I always knew that it wasn't because he wasn't proud of my music, but because he was having a hard time with coping with the fact that I was so far away. When I was about 6 years old, him and my mom got divorced, and she really broke his heart. And so for him, family was very, very, very important. And so my mom kind of being the person that was backing this choice to allow me to go and stay with my grandparents, to stay in this music company, was really difficult for him. So I think that came from those two sides, right? So the resentment from her, but also it's difficult having your 13-year-old daughter be far away, and then you get to see them for 2-month periods, and then there's all this time in between.
Well, but for you, though, it's even harder. You're the child in the situation, right? So what is it like for you?
It was really hard, but at the same time, because I was a child, it always just felt very fun and adventurous, right? And my grandparents, who are my dad's parents, are very honestly some of my favorite people in the entire world. I love them more than anything in this whole universe. So getting to be with them all the time and be raised by them was an honor, to be quite frank. My grandfather was a lead officer in the Peace Corps for over 20 years. And then my grandmother she did a lot of work within the disability community and a lot of the places that my grandfather would be stationed in. And she is just this beautiful, wonderful, open-hearted, but very fiery person.
They're your mom's parents, you said?
My dad's parents.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad's parents. Okay. So my grandmother is Colombian and my grandfather is Italian. And so just the combination of the two, he was very pragmatic and, loving and creative, but at the same time very stern. And she was just so full of warmth and joy and fun. And so just the combination, it was just really wonderful getting to be raised by them. So it was hard to be away from my parents, but at the same time, when I was with my parents, we were always very present with each other. I think that later in life, as I became an adult, it's one of the reasons why I was able to, be present with so many of the people in my life. Because to me, it's not necessarily about how much we talk while I'm gone, but it's about our ability to be present when we're with each other and what that looks like. And I think it's also because my parents, again, they're divorced. So when I was with my mom, it's not like I spent that time yearning for my dad, right? I was with my mom. That was my mom's time, and then vice versa. It allowed me to kind of translate that into adulthood, where now when I'm with people, I'm just present with them, right? I'm not on my phone all the time. I'm not inquiring about all these other things and all the other people in my lives. I'm here present with them in the moment, doing my best to understand what they're going through or talk about it or check in. And so I think that has a lot to do with them and just the lifestyle that I led. Even with friends, it was very similar, right? I would leave for, again, months at a time, and then I'd come home and it would be the middle of the school year here in the States. And so I'd have to be in school because you have to be registered in a school in the United States. And so I'd leave for months at a time, and I'd come back and it's the middle of the fall semester or the spring semester. And so I just jumped into high school, and I went to a performing arts high school in Washington, D.C. to kind of help upkeep all of my music because, again, singing opera, your voice is a muscle. So you have to continue to use it in order to basically flex it and keep it strong. So I was really lucky to do that, but I did come and go throughout my friends' lives. I would come back and a whole new world would happen for them, and I'd have to catch up with them and where they were in their life. And that sometimes was really hard. I would say it wasn't as hard with my friends as it was with my siblings to kind of have that disconnect of I just came back and you have long hair now and a deep voice and a girlfriend and, you and mommy aren't talking. Oh, cool. I didn't know that. And it's not because we didn't talk. You know, my siblings and I talk all the time, but we were in high school. Europe and in Asia, and I was traveling, well, they were in one place. So also sometimes like I wouldn't be able to reach them just solely because I didn't have like that phone capability at times. And also just, you know, I think it's so much easier to engage with someone when you're with them, right? You see them every day, you're going through the same things, but I find that people, when they have to catch up on so many long things, they just shorten it because they're almost tired from thinking about having to catch up on all that stuff.
For sure.
Right? So something that may have been like a 5-day conversation, honestly, if I had been there and seen all of it and kept up with everything step by step, turns into like a 5 seconds of like, oh yeah, that happened. And this is what's going on. And I mean, I see that more actually, I think, now that I'm an adult with my friends who I don't see for really extended periods of time, because all of us are living different lives. We live in different places, that sometimes it can get like hard to get in the groove of like, oh, I'm actually updating you. I'm catching you up, right? Because it's easy to fall into like small talk about it, almost like, yeah, like I've just been really busy with work.
And that's it.
And,
right?
you know, like I go home and like whatever, like you're not getting into like the small nuances and fine things that happened in your day in comparison to, you know, I think that there's some of my friends that if I know like we're going to be hanging out for a while, it's easier to get into that flow naturally. Be like, oh yeah, well, like what happened with that guy that you were seeing? Or like, what happened with that girl that you saw the other night that like fell down the stairs? Like something crazy, right? Something that's small but also big in conversation.
It's the details that are interesting, not the overall things.
Exactly. And so kind of jumping back to where we started at this, like being a child, having to travel in and out, that part was really hard, I would say. But I never felt like I wasn't necessarily parented, because I had 4 parents, basically. And again, because my parents are divorced, they would have partners in their lives, right? So even more parents and adults in my lives, just in really different ways. I think that the parts where I noticed like not having parenthood, I didn't notice necessarily till I was in college more, or even as an adult, thinking about like life experiences that my current friends are having right now at this age, right? Or we're having in college, like smoking for the first time, or falling in love, or even getting to just make independent choices for themselves that they weren't able to do once they didn't have parents around all the time, right? And because I was basically a child in an adult world as an opera singer, there were a lot of experiences that I had at a very early age. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that it was really interesting for me to notice these things of like, oh, you probably weren't out like drinking when you shouldn't have been at 14 years old. But the thing is that I was around a bunch of adults who offered me alcohol. Because one, I was in Europe, so alcohol is nowhere near as taboo as it is here, right? And two, that's what the adults were doing, and that's who I was surrounded by in comparison to my friends who were at sleepovers. And so I think that in that sense, I was living like this like parallel lifestyle that now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, yeah, I get that. Like
it's a very unique way to grow up.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes even I have friends who are, I have an eclectic range of people in my life and ages of people in my life. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that because I did spend a lot of time with adults and I did have a lot of those adults experiences early on, I'm kind of tired, right? Like I don't have FOMO the way that I see a lot of the people in my age range necessarily having, where they're like, oh no, like people are going out, like I have to go out. Like I never feel that way. For me, I do this check-in every day where I'm like, do I have the emotional spoons and energy to do this activity? 1, 2, why am I going out? Am I going out because I want to spend time with my friend, or am I going out because I feel like I have to go spend time with my friend? And I have this kind of like rule of thumb in some ways with the people in my life, where all the people in my lives are get tos, not have tos. I get to spend time with them. And if we are ever in a position where I feel like I have to spend time with you, then usually I'll talk to someone about it and I'll let them know like, hey, this task has become either tedious or difficult or makes me feel like I have to be here instead of like wanting to do it. And I also think that that comes with having the opportunity to do so many things already. So I don't have this moment where I'm like, oh, I have to go to that bar and I have to get shit-faced with my friends. I don't feel that way. I went through a pretty intense health scare about 1.5 years ago. And it basically was entirely stress related. And I could no longer have like high levels of drama and stress in my life the way that I used to. And I think that that was really helpful when it came to this like teaching approach, basically, because I had to be more stern with people about like not bringing this into my life. And if I had to teach you all of the time, every second of each day, it was just going to be too emotionally laboring for me. And then I just couldn't do that. Right. And so I think that in some ways it really allowed like the quality of friends and friendships that I have to be elevated because I was no longer like carrying the weight of people who weren't at least willing to be aware enough of themselves to accept when I would have to say things like, no, I can't do that, or I need space, or this is the information that I can help you and support you with, and this is the capacity that I have. So I think that now it's a lot better because the people that I choose, I'm also more blunt with them, again, about like my emotional capacity to do that. When I was, even when I say when I was younger, I mean like 3 years ago, right? When I was in a different headspace, in a different, honestly, relationship with myself, but also with a different partner, I was taking on a lot of weight. And part of that was because the person that I was with was really, they were really hard on me, but also on themselves. And so I would seek out other spaces to hold emotional weight because it felt very difficult for me to experience even my own emotions when I was in that relationship. And so I would take on more than I could, right? And I was with that person for 5 years. And so I was taking on more and more and more weight. And honestly, not only was I taking on more toxic friendships, but I was a part of creating those toxic friendships. And I wanted people to lean on me and I wanted people to need my support and to want my help because I wasn't getting that from the person that I was with, right? I wasn't getting this relationship where I could communicate openly about how I was feeling. So because I couldn't fix what was happening in my life and in my personal life, I was like on a bender fixing other people's problems in their lives and supporting them. When I was, again, younger, I was really dependent on feeling wanted in that way, and feeling like I had all this knowledge to give in that emotional capacity. And now that I'm older and have gone through different experiences that have made me create more boundaries within myself, I would say, I don't have as many people in my life that I'm carrying emotionally and even with their emotional knowledge about themselves. I would say that the new partnership that I'm in, something that I valued is that I met my current partner while I was dating multiple other individuals, ethically, and they all knew about each other. So there were no secrets, right? I was openly dating, and being able to see how each person kind of handled that concept of openly dating and me being able to communicate with them about what was going on in my life and what I was experiencing with other people and the other relationships that I was having, and just being able to communicate openly about how that made them feel and how that makes me feel. It gave me the opportunity to find a partner who I am not afraid to talk about anything with, honestly, even if they're really big, hard feelings. And I get to learn new things from them all the time, and they learn new things from me all the time. And it feels like symbiosis instead of feeling like I'm either being drained or I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it's not transactional.
Yeah,
it's symbiotic.
Exactly. And So that feels nice and definitely different than some of the old relationships that I used to have.
So tell me about being gay.
Oh, I love being gay.
Isn't it so great?
I love being gay.
The greatest thing ever.
It's honestly the greatest thing ever. I love being gay. I think that it's like kind of funny because my mom is gay. So when I was younger...
Is that why she left your dad?
Yeah. Yeah. That has a big part to do with it. And when I was younger, my mom actually used to, like, she didn't care if I had boys in my room. Like, whatever, close the door, I don't give a shit, right? But girls, anytime I'd have girls in my room, she's like, no, door stays open. And I remember, like, I was so resentful because she wasn't like that with any of my other siblings, but she's like, you're gonna be the gay one. And I'm like, I am not gonna be the gay one, right? And, like, most people, I feel, you know, when they're gay and they're trying to hide that they're gay or don't know that they're gay yet, you know, there's this concept of they're like straight because they don't want to be honest with themselves. But I never felt like I couldn't be honest with myself. I just felt like I didn't want my mom to be right badly.
You probably didn't want to be her. Like, you didn't want to
follow
in her footsteps.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, my mom and I have the same name.
Right.
So, you know, I have no interest in, I wanted to be my own person. I am also a twin. So I'm a twin. And me and my mom have the same name. And I look kind of like my mom out of the two of my parents, right? So that was like me trying to be my own individual and having my own identity was really important to me. I mean, I'm sure it's important to everyone, right? But I felt like at the time, I really wanted to be separate from that. And so I dated a lot of guys. I dated a lot of guys when I was in middle school. I dated a lot of guys when I was in high school. I got my first real serious girlfriend when I was in high school, but my best friend, who's like literally one of my life people, she kissed me when I was like 12 years old. Her and this other girl, they kissed me at the exact same time. And I just remember, like, after that day, I was like, wow, I just want them to kiss me again. Like, I can pretend like it never happened so that they can kiss me again. And it wasn't even...
Wait, how did that geometrically work? Like, they both came at your mouth at the same time?
Yeah, so they literally cornered me in a corner of my... At the time.
So they kissed you on kind of two sides of your mouth?
Yeah, exactly.
That's some special geometry, and that's like bump noses.
Yeah, no bopping
foreheads.
happened. No bopping. And I was so nervous because this was the first night that I met them, by the way.
Okay.
And I was like, I want to have a sleepover with these girls. And we all went to different schools.
Together?
No. They were just best friends. And we all went to different schools. And we had originally met because my best friend's name is May. Because May's older sister was, you know, she was like... I think she's like 4 years older than us, would always take me places, right? And so then I met them in like the town that I was living in Bethesda. And I thought they were so cool. And May was like, will you come home with me? Because you seem really cool. And Julia's already sleeping over. So it's Julia and May, right? And then I come over and they were like, have you ever kissed a girl? And I said, no, I've never kissed a girl. And they're like, no way you haven't kissed a girl. And I said, yeah, I've never kissed one. And then they like cornered me in a corner. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, should we do it? Should we do it? And they just looked at each other and then they both kissed me at the same time. And that was it. And my friend group, like from them, we were all very affectionate with each other. And it wasn't sexual. It wasn't like romantic. It was like platonic, deep love for each other. Like, I'm going to kiss you, but not in like a, ooh, let's make out, but like a small like peck hello. Like, I'm so happy I got to see you. I missed you so
very
much.
European.
Yeah. And just very sweet. We were just very sweet with each other. And so because we were all so sweet with each other in that way, like I found myself, you know, in situations where we would be with other people who would like newly join the group who were queer. And I found myself like being attracted to them and being like, oh, wow, like this is kind of crazy. And I remember this girl who to this day is one of my very close friends. But at the time she was older than me. And I thought she was so hot. I mean, she's still so hot, but I thought that she was the hottest thing ever, and she was dating.
What was so hot about her?
Like, her energy was hot. Her haircut was hot. It was like this, like, in between.
Mask person or?
So Their mask, their mask in very like indigenous. They have a lot of indigenous features, but there was just something about like their quiet energy that I was really attracted to. And
they like set your type.
They full on set my type. And it's like very real. And I always make jokes that they set my type, but also, you know, all the women that I basically have loved over my life, they do have a type, right? Visually. And they all look like the women that were like in the paintings all around my house growing up. Because my dad is a very avid art collector. And very specifically of like indigenous art and from, you know, Colombia and from Italy and from all of the places that he's traveled all over the world, from Laos, from Thailand, from Mexico, right? So all of these places where he's traveled that I've had the honor of being exposed to growing up. And it was just so beautiful, right? I will often, even though my mom is gay, which is funny, I would say that I learned all of my admiration of women from my dad and like how to admire women. Because he doesn't just admire like, oh, someone who's hot. He admires beauty and like the features that create beauty in all these cultures and what that looks like, and being able to understand the concept of beauty and not necessarily like the cultural lens that filters beauty, but being able to see attributes and being like, wow. Like the earth molded you to be this beautiful. Like
the aesthetics as opposed to, like what the trends are.
Yeah, exactly.
That's lovely. It's a lovely distinction.
Yeah. And so I feel very grateful for it. But a lot of the women that I've been with look like these people that I've grown up looking at. I mean, look at this piece right here on my wall. I mean, you all can't see it, but these are from my dad. These are prints from my dad that hang up on my wall, right? And so I feel very grateful that I can admire women that way. But yeah, she was just so hot. And I remember like having such a secret big crush on her. Like my friends knew that I had a crush on her, my close friends, but she didn't, because she was dating this girl who was in our friend group. And that's how I met her originally. And then later on in life, actually, we became like very, very, very close friends. And we kissed one time, literally one time. And then like pretty soon after I got into a relationship. I mean, she lives very far away from me. And we've just always been extremely good friends ever since. But I just kind of remember like seeing her, and in that moment, it like catapulted my brain into being like, oh, yeah. Like,
my mom was right.
Yeah, like guys don't make me feel this way. You know, like, I mean, and because I can admire beauty, actually, it's one of the reasons why I could date men, is because I can see that a man is beautiful. I can see that they have beautiful features and all these things, but like intimacy wise, I didn't find myself feeling attracted to them. It felt like a chore in some ways, right? Like this is a have to relationship. This is not a get to relationship. And as my friend, it's definitely a get to relationship, but not intimately. Right.
I mean, it's something that, it took me a while into my adulthood to understand the difference between being attracted aesthetically, being attracted sexually, romantically, because I would see somebody beautiful who was maybe into me, and I would say, oh, they're really pretty and they're into me, like I might as well, and then feel kind of, gross or whatever after the encounter that we had. And later on I was like, oh, I have to make that distinction. Like someone can be beautiful, even in the queer way, doesn't mean that I'm attracted to them. Like, what is that missing piece? Or somebody can be like not beautiful, quotation marks.
Yep.
And be very sexy and very attractive to me specifically, right? So
exactly
that distinction, it took me a long time to understand that.
And I think that also like breaking down the barriers of like what attraction even really means, right? Like, I think that as I got older, I was able to understand that, there are even certain kinks that I like within people's personality, and certain traits that I like visually, right? For, ironically enough, for a very long time, like teeth. In my mind, I thought that people having good teeth was like something that was like a deal breaker for me. And then I kept falling in love or, being attracted to people that had honestly terrible teeth, but the most beautiful smiles. Just smiles that like lit up the whole room. Like their energy, their affect just filled up your whole heart from their joy, right? And then I later found out that it had nothing to do with teeth and had everything to do with the joy and like what they look like when they feel that like that ecstasy of pure joy. And that was like, that was a really special moment for me to kind of figure that out, because it allowed me to also understand just my type. And I have had the privilege of being in different relationships with very different people. And I find that the relationships that I've had with women, which I basically continue to have since I was in high school, moving up, because that was, again, when my first like real high school girlfriend came along. But that was really intense. I would say it did not turn me off of women, but it turned me off of relationships for a while. She was this absolutely incredible artist, and she really viewed me as like a muse for her work. And you know, when I was younger, this almost like obsessive romantic love was so romanticized in books, in movies. You know, for someone to be just so wholeheartedly obsessed with you was kind of like the big thing. And then I met someone, and I had this person who was painting me all of the time, painting me sleeping, painting me eating, painting me walking, right? Painting, you know, mythical scenarios that are never ever going to happen, but still paintings of me, right? And she felt so inspired by me all of the time. And it was really beautiful, but also a lot of pressure. She was a year older than me. And so it didn't feel like I was feeling like being pushed or rushed into things necessarily, but it felt intense, like a lot. And
well, it seems like it wouldn't allow you to just have the full expression of you, because she saw you in such a specific way.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't allow you your full humanity.
Yeah. And I just remember, like, I think that was something that was really pushed me over the edge, to be quite honest, was when I had left for about 4 months for a show run, and I came back to DC, and we had met in DC, and her entire like gallery show that they do for their senior year that I wasn't aware of, right? It was the consent aspect that was really upsetting to me, was that she had made me and painted me and every single medium you can imagine, right? So there was a sculpture of me. There was me with chalk, me with pencil, me with charcoal, me with paint, acrylic paint, right? Textured paint, like every format you could ever imagine. I think there were over like 27 pieces in the whole thing.
Were you embarrassed, kind of? Like, not embarrassed in a way of like, but like that this person is just so focused on you, like, right, it's a lot to hold. What did it feel like?
It wasn't embarrassing per se, right? Because I knew that she loved making me the center and focus of her work. I did know that. What was difficult for me was the thought of like me at like 16 years old, about to be 17 years old, the thought of me now laying in someone's apartment, someone that I don't know, right? Because all these works were up for sale and most of them had sold in someone's apartment that I don't know, right? I wasn't ready to, you know, mysteriously bump into someone one day and they're like, oh, you're from that art piece, right? These are moments that to me were very intimate.
Were they nudes?
Some of them, and not necessarily fully nude, right? But like one of them is of me sleeping, and it's of me sleeping from behind, and I don't have a shirt on. So it's just like the shape and curves of my body. And it's a really beautiful piece, to be honest. But I wasn't ready for it to be like 4 feet long in someone's house up for sale. And so that was very upsetting to me. And I just remember like us talking about it. And I think that conversation was the conversation that really kind of broke us in that way, is because for her, she was like, you're never home. So this is how I create your presence, right? This is how you inspire me. This is how I make my work. For her, it was very much so like work and art and inspiration focused. And for me, that felt very confining. It felt like, one, I'm on this pedestal, but also I can't go anywhere from here, right? You know, if I'm not this perfect image of what you've created, but also I don't know if I want to be your forever, and placing all of this weight of your art's success on your ability to draw me is stressful.
Well, also, given that you've been on stages your entire childhood, you know, here you are on another stage and you're in an intimate relationship, and that just seems like more of the same. Maybe not exactly what your soul needed at the time.
Exactly. And, you know, as also at this time, you know, not something that I'm necessarily proud of, but I found myself like seeking out other relationships when I was away from her, not necessarily ones where I was like sexual or intimate with them physically, but ones where I could just talk to someone where they weren't placing me on a pedestal, right? Like strangers. Like I enjoyed the intimacy with strangers because they don't know me, right? I can tell them this deep thing about me, and like literally in 3 hours, I'm never going to see you ever again, right? And so I found myself engaging in that sort of behavior more frequently. And I mean, I for sure have been unfaithful when I've been in past relationships when I was younger. And I think for me, that one in some ways, I wouldn't say it started that, but it also did, right? Like once I got out of that relationship, I went through this big stage where I was like, I don't really want to be someone's girlfriend, but I also don't know how to like ethically let you know and in a kind way that like, I don't want to have a girlfriend. So I'm just going to date a lot of people and overlap them in a way where they don't know about each other, because also I was traveling, right? So it was easy to be like, okay, like, ciao, like here you are, I'm going to leave you in Italy and I'm going to go to DC and I'm going to go to Germany, and you know, kind of balancing that and just wanting to be wanted, but within my own limits, right? Having that control was much more important to me when I was traveling and in high school. And then when I went and I came to Berkeley and I was in a place, you know, coming to Berkeley was the longest I'd lived in one place, basically, since I was 12 years old, which was super weird. And was also a kind of like a mind maze to handle when it came to dating people, right? Because I had a lot of relationships, and now I'm in a place where I can't necessarily like overlap them and run away from them in the same way, because I'm going to be at this place for the next 4 years. I'm going to know these people that are here.
So what did you do?
I would say I had more monogamous interactions. So like when I first got to Berkeley, I was hooking up with people, but it wasn't like intimacy. I wasn't talking to them every day. It was very loose. And then I joined like a co-op and a sorority. And I had a lot of like really wonderful queer spaces. I was really grateful when I actually moved to Berkeley, because I think that moving there allowed me to begin like the most pure part of my gay expression. You know, a part of me being able to be gay, one, away from my family. So I didn't feel this like attachment to my mom in my gayness. But also I was in a space where being queer was so abundantly celebrated, and I wasn't doing my opera. So my identity wasn't being brought back to me being an opera singer and representing, you know, all of Italian culture. It was me just allowing to dress up like a fairy and do whatever I wanted and go to queer parties where I got to meet so many different types of beautiful people and so many types of beautiful souls. And that was really special for me. And I think, again, even that group that I told you when I was really young, when I was 12, where I got to be like, we were all very intimate with each other. A part of that was because the person that kind of tied us all together was my friend. His name was Aiden, and he was trans, and he was the first person that I had ever met that was trans. But I also just remember like him being the first person that I had ever met who just so like abundantly gave love for who people were. He's like, I don't care where you're from. I don't care what you do. I don't care who you love, but I love your personality. I love your soul and your insides, and whatever opportunity and moment you have, you know, I love that for you. He brought so much joy into this world.
You still friends with him?
Unfortunately, he passed away when I was 14 years old. He had taken his own life, and it was very, it was an incredibly impactful moment in my life and in my friend's life, who we all knew each other. And I think it's also one of the reasons why even coming to Berkeley felt like such a big deal for me, because there are so many spaces where you can just be your authentic self. And so many of us settle for places where we can't do that. Well, one, because we don't know that there are other places that exist, but also I just think that some people get really scared of that, right? And knowing that they can leave the situation that they're in. when I moved to Berkeley, I just remember thinking like, if only he had lived here, right? If only he had lived someplace where being his authentic self, I mean, maybe not like 100% accepted, because obviously society in general is always still catching up, but accepted enough to not feel, you know, like he was the only like trans man in DC, because to him, that's how he felt, right? And I think that I understand that feeling, because when I was living there, I knew a good amount of queer people, but not really. You know, it's like the same 7 lesbians that you know, and you move here and there's like 7,000 lesbians, just lesbians, not even queer people, like people who identify as lesbians, people who identify as gay men, as trans men, and then there's like the non-binary that comes all in between. And so I think that having like such an explosion of the queer community be here was just really like impactful on my ability to experience myself and my authentic self without having that be like the main identifier of who I was. Because I mean, also growing up and traveling and living in all the places that I lived, I couldn't be gay in a lot of those places, especially not as a femme identifying woman, because it wasn't safe. So it's not even like something that I had to hide because I was ashamed of it, but mostly safety purposes. And so coming to a place where, you know, I can hold my girlfriend's hand when I'm walking down the street and I'm not scared, that's a big thing. I can focus on other things in my personality and who I am and what's happening in my life, instead of just being like, when I go outside, these are all the ways that I can't be myself because maybe someone will know I'm gay.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about, when did you get your first tattoo?
Oh, my first tattoo I got actually in Marrakesh with my elder sister. Mm-hmm. It is on my rib cage, and it says sisters. It's pretty basic, actually. And I got it when I was 16 years old. So it was at the time like a big deal, because my mom is a Jewish woman. She's a Black and Jewish woman. And so for her, she's like, you are not tattooing your body. Like, you're not doing that. But my dad was all about it. He's like, yeah, do it. We love it. Your dad loves the arts. Yeah, he loves the arts. And he also, like, family is really important to him, right? So that bond, like, he's like, it's a sister tattoo. It's not like she's going out and getting, like, something, you know, really vulgar on her body. Like, it's something that's bonding her and her sister together. And it was a stick and poke, and it hurt so fucking badly. It hurt so badly. But it was okay. It was okay. I think it was, for that one, that was definitely more like experience oriented than, you know, like, I've really thought this through. This is an aesthetic. Like, this is something that I'm creating or that I cherish on my body. It's funny, the tattoo that I think I identify that with the most, like, that I made the choice to do, that I was able to provide for myself, that I took a lot of time in, is actually the first tattoo that you gave me, which is the flower, the dahlia on my shoulder. Mm-hmm. And that was a really big deal for me when I got that, actually, because
tell me more.
All the money that I was making from my opera went into paying for, like, my life and my education and being able to travel, right? So it's kind of one of those things where, like, your money is just going back into your life, right? But I wasn't experiencing it. I wasn't like, wow, I just made $8,000 in the past 4 months. Like, I now have $8,000. That wasn't what it was like, right? It was like, no, that went into housing you and feeding you.
That's really sad, though, because the adults who were performing with you, they probably got paid and then had something left over besides the costs of being there.
Right, but they also weren't having to be privately tutored.
Okay.
To be in school.
More expenses.
Right. And my dad was very adamant, like when I would go home, I had to fly back home, right? So that would pay for my flights to and from home. And most of the adults in my life lived in Europe, or they were like, whatever, for my break, I'm just going to stay in whatever town we're in.
So there was like no fund that you guys set up for you for later?
I mean, yeah.
There was some, but not.
There was some, but like, I didn't really need a lot of money for it. You know what I mean? Like, also, when you are singing opera, you know, especially as an Italian opera group, again, you're representing a whole culture. You're not just doing this like side gig. So they were really protective about what we did and how we used our time. And like if we wanted to go out to like a club, it'd be like, okay, but like you not like in disguise. We got to keep like a low key, right? You know,
Don't start singing opera in the middle of the.
Yeah, and like we don't want people to know who you are. Yeah. Like, you know, I wasn't allowed to have like a regular phone, I guess I would say. Like I had like a flip phone, but like Blackberries and things that you could go on the internet with, I couldn't have for a long time because they were like, we don't trust you with the phone. Like we don't know what you're gonna do when you're out drunk with your friends. Also, I was a first soprano, so I wasn't conventionally drinking alcohol like everyone else was, because that goes up against your vocal cords. I was absorbing it in different ways, and so they knew that, and so they're like, you guys are getting hammered, we're not going to let you have access to certain things. And so I didn't have a lot of money, right? So then when I went to college, I still didn't have a lot of money, but I was working like 5 jobs. And I remember like I had always loved like the notion of what dahlias represent, but I also think that like aesthetically they're just so breathtaking. And they're a flower that to me is like really like the underdog, like it's really underrated for a lot of people. And I just, when I was growing up, like my whole life, I've always been interested in like the meaning of flowers and what they have meant in different cultures and what power they hold in themselves. And so I had done a lot of research on the flower that I wanted. And even honestly, I'd done a lot of research on you and the type of tattoo artist that I wanted to be working with. And that was like kind of stressful for me at first because
there's so many of us.
There's so many. There's so many. And also like vibe was really important to me. I have had tattoo artists in the past where like their energy was really like we just weren't connected, or I would feel like I felt uncomfortable throughout the whole session. So it also meant that like I didn't feel comfortable like voicing my opinion and if I wanted something to be different. And this was the first time that I like had done and really looked into it. And it was my first like bigger tattoo. And I just remember I was so nervous because I also met you and I had seen like all the work that you had done and, you know, all the access and clients that you had. And so I was like, oh, this is like a legitimate person. This is not like someone in, you know, like a little tent in the middle of Marrakesh, right? So I felt like I needed to come with every piece of information. And I mean, I remember when even like upon going over to like your website, you send out this email where it's very lengthy, the questions that you have. And so I felt nervous because I was like, well, what if they don't like me? Right? Like what if I answered the question wrong? Like I really want this tattoo done by this person.
That's so funny. You know, I still get these. Sometimes people will be emailing me and they'll say, I hope I passed the test. I'm like, it's not a test. It's just, you know, I have to just also make sure from my side, right, that I want to spend that time with that person and that I only have so many tattoos in my time, in my body, in my life. And so I want to be a little bit discerning and careful about how I spread that energy, give those tattoos. And so, but it's so funny because people totally do feel that way and it's totally not my intention. It's just like I have to also protect myself in some way from folks that I might not want to work with. And so...
Which makes total sense.
Totally. But it's funny that people feel like, oh my God, it's a test. And what if I don't pass it?
Well, and also just like upon meeting you, you were so cool. You were in this like big building in SF and you like have a very calm energy that I think because I'm so like, I don't want to say eccentric. In some ways, yes, but like vibrant and so, you know, outgoing with my energy that I always worry that I've just like rainbow vomited all over someone when I spend time with them and that they don't want that or they're not ready for it. And I really try to be mindful about it. I think that also as an adult, I'm like less mindful about it mostly because I'm like, this is who I am. So also if you don't like me, that's okay. Like I'm not offended by it. I'm not upset by it. Like we are just not each other's chosen people. And I really wanted to be one of your chosen people for this tattoo. And so that was a big deal. And also I just gotten into like a brand new relationship and it was with someone who was the complete opposite of who I am as a person. Like could not be more opposite. But there were ways that we really like loved each other and understood each other and got along.
Well, so they were physically your type. So imagine that maybe at first like overshadowed whatever else was happening there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They're physically my type, and they were very intelligent, and I felt like I was learning like a lot of new things. So in that way, they also made me feel more comfortable, like going outside of the box of myself and what I would typically do. And so this felt like this like big move that I was making. And I just remember like after the first session, I left, and obviously we couldn't do the whole thing in the time that we had. And I also saw this like representation of this tattoo as the way that I experienced change, because I had had it almost, I want to say for like 3 or 4 months, where it was just like, it was half complete in that way. Right. And I fell in love with it just the way that it was, because I understood that feeling of like, there's so much beauty within those empty spaces, but also in that colorful spaces. That even when I went to go get it completed, I was like, well, what if I don't like it as much as I like it this way, like halfway filled? And I love it. I mean, it's honestly one of my absolute favorite pieces. And when I finally completed it, I just remember like sitting later in my room and just like, I wouldn't say, I was very reflective on this being like a time stamp for this part of my life. Mm-hmm. Right? When I reflect and I look back on this tattoo and I look back on the memories, I'm going to look back at all of the moments that circulated this memory and who I was when I got this piece. And kind of seeing bigger pieces in that way, I think having so many like small, tiny pieces that I forget about, almost kind of like freckles on my body, they feel less so like time stamped. And these bigger pieces that I have are just so representational of like, this is something that I was able to commit myself to because this was very important at this time of my life, aesthetically or visually or, conceptually. And this is why I wanted it to be a part of how my aesthetic is to people when they experience me.
Well, I think also just what's interesting too is that I don't usually allow guests in the room, although I used to be more lax with that. I'm a bit less into it now, but I generally prefer to just be with my client. And for whatever reason, your ex-partner came with you. Was it just for one or both sessions?
It was just the one. And it was like towards the
first
end
one
of
or the second one?
It was the second one. Because the first one, it was just you and I.
Yeah.
And that was good. I mean, I remember I asked you to like spray my arm with like that numbing spray like 30 times. And you were like, it's okay. We're going to get through this. And I'm like, I know. Which is now funny because I think in the newer tattoo that I have like on my hips, I feel like I've asked for like, in my mind, I even told this to my current partner. I was like, I'm so proud of myself. Like, not only did I not ask for a lot of breaks because I didn't need them, but I'm now able to like engage in conversation and express like, oh, that hurt, but please keep going. Like, I'm just saying it out loud to get the pain out of my body. And then it was like, I don't want to tell them that this really fucking hurts because I just asked them to stop like 5 minutes ago. And now my ability again to like advocate myself is different. But yeah, they came for the second one, and it was like towards the end of it.
Yeah. In my mind, it's almost like they were there the whole time. Like I definitely got an energetic impression from them. Like I barely remember their face, but I just think it's interesting that, in later years in our relationship, yours and I's relationship, like it was important that they were there so that I could have some impression of them, so that I could provide you with some support around the time when you were going through the breakup. Like, because had I not had that experience, it would have been a lot more murky for me to like, to try to be there for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was interesting because I so really feel like I really rarely meet people's partners because I don't usually want to include extra energies in the room.
Yeah. Which makes total sense. And it's kind of funny that you say that because a lot of my friends, and honestly should have been one of the many red flags, right? But this was also a time in my life where all of the people that I dated prior to this person, all of my friends had met, right? And I always would get all their opinions and all this stuff. And I felt like this was the first relationship, because they were so different than me, that I kind of kept to myself, right? At the beginning, and I fell in love with them, and then I introduced them to my friends. But I have my best friends who to this day are my best friends who are like, I've literally met them one time or like 2 times. And honestly, wasn't super great, the experience that I had with them. And I just remember like how many of them didn't tell me that because they felt like they had no like feet to walk on in regards to it, because they're like, I only met them one time. Like, what can I tell you, right? And kind of what, now back into this relationship that I'm in right now, I find myself like literally the first date that we went on, she met all my friends. Like literally, basically like 75% of them, because I kind of looked at them and I was like, you're going to kind of spend the day with me if you want. Like really, the way I set it up is we're going to go to the farmer's market and I'm going to make you food from the farmer's market because that's what I do every Saturday, right? And I had like, I think like 10 other plans for that day because I didn't know if it was like a good date. Like you can join me on any of these activities if you'd like to, but also like feel free to go home. Like if you are done with this vibe, like go home. I'm not offended. Mm-hmm. And I just remember she stayed the whole day, like going on into the night, right? Which is like, of course, a queer stereotype of the fact that
first date for 24 hours.
Yeah, right. Which was very different, by the way, than my date with my ex-partner who we were speaking about. That date was like 2 hours, solid 2 hours, right? But to me now, it's really important for the people in my life to meet the people in my life.
There must have also been something there for your ex-partner too, where maybe they did not want to be seen by your friends.
100%. I mean, they were also a very judgmental person, I would say. And not always in a bad way, right? For them, it was just that they were very skeptical when they approached people. And I am extremely open when I approach people. I'm like, show me who you are. I want to know all about you. Like all the beauties, all the ins and outs. Like I want to know about it. And they were instantly skeptical about people, even prior to meeting them, right? And so that was hard for me to have them spend time with my friends, but also they didn't really want to. And in some ways, it alienated me further from my friends because I had to choose. And not because they would tell me I had to, right? But because I felt like there was going to be some sort of consequence for not choosing them. And I would want to spend time with them because, who doesn't enjoy spending time with their partner? And
that's why you pick them, because you like spending time with them.
Right. Yeah. And so then I felt like all my free time was spending time with them. And it's funny because it actually became like a point of contention towards the end of our relationship. But they were like, I feel like you're always home and you're not spending time with your friends. And I'm like, well, I feel like whenever I go to spend time with my friends, we fight. It doesn't feel good. Like I don't come home feeling like, wow, I can't wait to tell you all about what I did today. I feel like I have to hide it because you're going to be bitter or butthurt about the fact that like you weren't included in the plans, or even worse, you're going to be judgmental. And I honestly don't want to listen to it. Right. Like it just became a chore having to manage my partner's emotions around me being excited about spending time with my friends. And in some ways I didn't really want to share my partner, the things that was happening with my partner, with my friends, because my friends are very protective of me. And again, because this person was the complete opposite of me, a lot of the things that I'd be like, you guys just don't get it because you love me so much and you love all these things about me, that the fact that she's so opposite of me, you're not seeing these things, right? And I just remember when we broke up, most of my friends were like, yeah, she fucking sucked. We didn't get to see you. Like, I missed you. And I feel like when I did see you, like, you weren't happy. Like, you weren't in a good place within yourself and within your relationship. And that was really more towards, like, the last 3 years that we were together. The first 2, I wouldn't say that they experienced that because, I mean, this person wasn't a bad partner when, like, we fell in love for a reason. But their ability to manage themselves and the way that they were feeling and how to cope with things was... They couldn't do it. And again, kind of what we spoke about earlier in our conversation, I felt like I was teaching them a lot emotionally, but then they would also gaslight me when what I had to say didn't make them feel good, right? And so that was really difficult for me to express and to share with my friends because I didn't want them to know about those things, because I didn't want them to hate this person in my life because this person was my partner. And so I think that, like, not a lot of people did get to experience that person. And I think even when I was going in the end of that breakup and I would reach out to you, that was really helpful and important to me because I felt like I didn't have a lot of people I could talk to because so many people just didn't know this person, right? They didn't know what to say. They're like, I don't know them. I can't tell you. It was just a lot of me, like, telling my side of the story. And either them being like, it's probably not that bad, or them just like, they just didn't understand.
Yeah, and all you really have to do is just be there, right?
Yeah.
There's not really a trick, but it was important that I had met them. Well, I also, wanted to know, because we're like lengthy. We're lengthy here. It's good. We're abundant.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't be sorry, please. Tell me about, so the shoulder piece that we did.
Yes.
That was our first piece, and then it was another.
Then it was this
couple years. Well, there's the pandemic also, but there was a couple of years kind of in between there, and then tell me about the
forearm piece. Yeah. So this piece is done by one of my favorite artists, Mia Oki, and they actually I got permission for the work to be done. And I mean, I remember I reached out to you because I was like, hey, I'm looking for someone that can do this piece. And it's funny because when I reached out to you, I didn't think that you were going to say, oh, I can do this, because I felt like your artwork was so important to you that I almost didn't want to like disrespect you by approaching you with someone else's art and being like, can you kind of stamp this on my body? And you're like, no, of course I can do that. I also had you adjust like the hair to be curly because I have curly hair, but the piece is of a woman, and there are, these arms stretching out. And what I loved about it is it gives me a reminder on a daily basis to give back the energy that I take in my day. And really, it's a prominent piece on my arm for that reason, because it is important to me, because I do absorb so much energy in my day with my job, with the people in my life, but also just who I am as a person. And I think that for a while that really weighed down on me, because I was taking and absorbing a lot of other people's affects and emotions and their experiences. And I think being precise and kind of meditating at the end of the day and giving myself the permission to release that energy, it has been really important in my journey. And as someone, honestly, who has ADD, visuals are very important and helpful to me. And so having that visual meant a lot to me. And so I think that the first two tattoos that I have gotten with you had a lot of, they had a lot of meaning to me in a more like intimate way. And so I think when I reached out to you about the pieces that we're now working on my hips, it's one of the first pieces that I have that was because I admire beauty. Mm-hmm. Right. The aesthetic aspect and element of it. And I mean, I absolutely love them. And for me, it was, even the fact that they're going from my hips down into my thighs is because I admire all forms, and specifically like the female form is incredibly beautiful to me. And so I chose, the cool color palette and the warm color palette, because I think that women are works of art. And so I wanted to have like almost the silhouette experience of artwork on my body. And it feels really special, right? It also kind of, in some way, makes me feel like an evolved butterfly, because I also got these tattoos, we started the journey of it post me going through, honestly, one of the hardest experiences of my life within that breakup, right? And really exploring who I am and myself, and having this opportunity to kind of like go through this metamorphosis and have you be there, and just being able, again, it's that timestamp, being able to look at this experience and what's going on my body and seeing how it represents me and who I am as a person, and the vibrancy that kind of comes along with that. And even the flower that comes from the piece, right? That's on my hip, having it be almost this more grand version of what's on my shoulder, but on a different part of my body, and seeing how that kind of evolved.
I mean, the piece started with you just saying, I want this line, this very specific line, around the hip bone and down the leg, mm-hmm. right? Down the center of the leg, this very specific line that outlines a very specific curve that is very symbolic of the female form. Mm-hmm. And then we went from there, right? It was like, well, what if we do it in this pattern? And, what if it's dots? And what if it's different colors? And do we want a rainbow gradation on each leg? Or do we want the warm tones on one side and the cool tones on the mm-hmm. other side? Like it was a whole process, right? That had many steps and decisions that we made along the way. Mm-hmm. And this is how I love to create. a piece of art, right? That's like you're like, I want a line. It's the seed of the piece.
Yep.
And then there's like all these layers that we come up with together to create the final product, which we don't yet have. It's not yet finalized. But that whole process is like, that's what just like is so delicious to me about the work, about this work.
Yeah.
And then the flower, we're using similar colors as your shoulder, but it's like the hip is a bigger piece of skin. So of course that's like a bigger, grander image on there. But also like it talks to the shoulder, right? It's like you're one being, you're one body. But yeah, we'll post the picture of some version of the way this tattoo has been coming to life when I post about the interview, so folks will see. We do still have to finish it, but yeah, it was such an exciting process to go through with you at that time. Also, like, yes, as you are having gone through this really hard patch in your life, coming back to yourself and coming back to the glorious fairy that is you, it really speaks to that, I think.
I also loved that. I think this is the first piece where we were so collaborative, right? Like, my first tattoo was also like, I sent you like a picture and I was like, this is kind of what I like. And then you kind of went with it and you got to create with it. And I really loved that.
It's just much simpler.
Right.
Much more straightforward.
Right. And the second piece was more of like someone else's art that you were helping me recreate on my body. And I think that going into your space and like literally having you draw on me with a Sharpie and us just going, we were there for like 3 hours just wiping my leg on and off, being like, does this look good? How do we feel about this? Right. And working together on what that looks like. It's, I think is also the most impactful piece in that way because of that, because it feels like this is, all of my artwork is artwork, but this feels like artwork that I was a part of, right? Not just on my body, but that I was a part of being a part of creating and just all the things that kind of go with it. And in some ways, I think that it speaks to our friendship in that sense, that we're able to collaborate and create in this way and be within both of like our loved mediums.
Yeah, the body and the artfulness and the queerness of it. It's a very queer tattoo.
Yeah, it is.
How do you relate to tattooing as a culture as a queer person? What's the relationship there for you?
Oh yeah. I totally know what you mean. It's kind of funny because in some ways, looking at my body now, because my current partner, she's only seen me covered in tattoos, which is so funny for me to think about. Like all the time I think about this. Like I look at old pictures and she's like, wow, you look so different. You don't have any tattoos. I'm like, oh, because you know me as like a tattooed person, right? And thinking that like there are people in my life who I haven't seen in a long time who don't know me as a tattooed person, right? Even those two separate identities in themselves is like a funny thing to think about. And I think that in some ways, even though all of my tattoos are, I would say like very feminine, they're not. You
are a femme.
Yeah, it's true.
Makes sense.
It's true. It's true, right? They're not necessarily all soft, right? Like when people look at me and they see, because my tattoos aren't massive. I don't have like a full back piece like you do. But
maybe someday.
Honestly, yes, absolutely. Trust me. Just more pictures to be sent. But, I would say that when people look at me, because I have so many of them, automatically it does twist this like, oh, like these are soft, but they're big. Like you can sit through something, right? I think that there's something that comes along with people that have bigger tattoos or a lot of tattoos that like adds this like hardness to someone that maybe wouldn't prior. Because even if honestly my whole like toe to hip was covered in flowers, I still had to sit with a needle going in my skin to get it, right? Even if this beautiful, dainty piece, and people understand that. Like they see that when they look at tattoos.
So you feel like it adds a toughness to somebody's physical presentation?
Yeah, and I think that, and funny enough, my girlfriend and I talk about this all the time because, they're more mask presenting, I would say, out of the two of us. And oftentimes people see them as being like the more dominant one or being the aggressor out of the two of us.
Yeah.
Because they have tattoos and they're mask presenting, and you know, it's very obvious that they're queer from like 100 feet away, right? And for me, it's less so obvious, I would say. And so when they meet my partner and they see that she's more, so she's shy, honestly. She's shy and she's very sweet. She has like golden retriever energy, but also
What
like.
about you? What's your energy?
Like a Doberman.
Your dog.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like if I had to be a dog.
I mean, are you a dog or are you a cat?
I would say I'm neither, to be quite honest. I mean, I would say I'm kind of like a bunny. I think that's why I
like
have
how
bunnies.
people say like all girls are cats, all boys are dogs.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's sort of true in like queer relationships. You know, like my girlfriend's totally a cat. I'm definitely a dog of the two of us. Like maybe I'm not a dog to other people. But like sometimes in those like gender dynamics in a relationship, it can be really funny that the two energies can be equated with the cat or dog energy.
Yeah.
But your bunny, how's a bunny different from a dog?
Yeah, so like a bunny is kind of like a blend between a cat and a dog because they're independent, but they also really enjoy to be cuddled and just like loved up, but they're extremely expressive. And I think that for me, the difference with cats is that their like their mood switches a little bit more and their need for independence, like their need is just greater than how I feel when I'm with other people. Not that I can't be independent, but I'm kind of like, no, wrap me up, love me up, cuddle me, you know, like pick me up and cuddle me up and treat me sweetly with love. But also at the same time, like I'm feisty. I have a bit of an attitude, but it's more like an attitude to express boundaries and less so an attitude because I'm just like, I'm feeling sassy today.
I just love that you said a Doberman.
Yeah, that was my first thought.
I would never think that if I just look at you.
No, exactly. I know. It's like, and that's what like the funny part. I think that my personality is more Doberman
like
oriented.
If I looked at you, I would say maybe a doodle.
Everyone says that. It's like
the
so
hair.
funny. It's the hair. It's totally my hair.
You're so like friendly and like exuberant and happy.
I think like that or like a Dalmatian.
Okay.
Right? I could get with a Dalmatian because Dalmatians can be quite vicious, but they're very sweet. And like when you see them, they're very friendly. Growing up, I had this issue of like, you know, people have like resting bitch face. I would say that like I have resting friendly face. And just like my energy is very open and welcoming, which like isn't an issue all the time, but sometimes it can be.
It can be an issue.
Yeah.
You get like picked out from the crowd by like people who just want to like have a conversation.
Yeah, and just like want to gush. And I think that like the introvert in me can sometimes be a little stressed out by that.
Oh yeah, no, I put up like a big Russian bitch face for that. I don't like
that.
And
even my girlfriend's the same way. Like she's like when she's not in the mood, she's not mean, but her face lets you know like I'm not the one. I'm not the one. And my face never says that. It never says I'm not the one. You can tell when I'm mad, but even then people are like, what are you mad about? Right? Like they want to check in with me.
I have never heard anybody refer to their face as a resting friendly face, and I love this concept.
it's so true.
Yeah.
And even with my job, right? Like I take Ubers very frequently because I don't drive, as you know. And oftentimes like Uber drivers, to be kind, you know, to have conversation, they'll be like, oh, what do you do? What's your job? And I will honestly, sometimes I'll be like, I work at California Pizza Kitchen, or like I'm a server at a bar. Like something super low maintenance. Yeah. So I don't have to talk about it because, I mean, I love my job. Love my job. It is my life. But two things. One, sometimes my Uber drivers are picking me up from the pole studio and I don't want to talk about being a pole dancer and being a child psychologist. And then also the other half of that is like everyone has someone in their lives that is neurodivergent, one. And two, everyone in the whole world should be in therapy. So then when they hear that I'm a therapist, instead of going to a real therapist, they come to me and they tell me all their problems. And I'm like, I didn't need to know that incredibly deep and intense thing in like the 3-minute car ride that we have.
Yeah.
And like now I'm left with this knowledge and you feel better. So.
Yeah. No, it's like free labor from you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your job.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up.
I know, we've been so busy talking today.
We have an abundant conversation. We need to edit. We've talked about all your tattoos and got a lot of really, I thought it was, fascinating talking about like friendship and how emotional intelligence and all of those things and your fascinating childhood. So my last question for folks usually is like, what's a small thing or a few that's been making you happy lately?
Ooh, I really love collecting cameras, like old cameras, like different types of cameras. So I think I have like 7 different types of Polaroid cameras and like a professional camera. And I've collected them over my lifetime, like when I go thrifting from other people. And I recently got one that I'm just like very excited about. And I am doing like a Polaroid project because the other day I like went into my Polaroid drawer and it has like hundreds and thousands of them. So I started to collect them and collaborate them and place them all over my wall in almost like a mosaic form. So doing that project has been really exciting for me. I would say that it's also been really interesting because I'm the kind of person who puts up all of the pictures that I take, including people who aren't my friends anymore, or I only met that one time, right? But I took this picture of this person for a reason and they touched my life in some way, shape, or form. And to me, photography is so much about, again, like those timestamps and those markers of who we were at that time.
It creates memories and lets you hold on to those memories.
Right, exactly. And again, even if I'm not friends with that person anymore, like they're still going to be on my wall, right? And I think some of the conflict I've had around it a little bit is just, deciding certain people about deciding if I'm going to put them on my wall, mostly because I also need to be mindful of the energy that I keep in my house and the sanctuary that I create. But I've honestly just been really excited about it and getting to look back.
It depends right on the energy. Like if you feel like you look at that picture, it brings up unsettledness, then you don't need that. But if it's just like, oh, this was nice. It was this one night we hung out with this random person. Like that.
Right, exactly.
That's lovely.
Exactly. And so I think that I've just been looking at those and trying to decide that. Like I have a picture with my ex in it, but it has like all of my other friends from this music event that we went to. And I kind of just like, I'm still going to hang this picture because I love this picture. I love all the people in it. Weird. Yeah, exactly. And I've also decided that like, if I walk by it a couple of times and it makes me feel weird because like seeing their face makes me feel weird, I'm just going to put a sticker over their face.
Okay.
I don't feel bad about that at all. Yeah. Like I know who it is.
Cool. That's a cool artistic project. I got to actually just see it in your apartment, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being amazing and being in my life. I'm grateful that you came to me all those years ago with your shoulder piece, and you've really enriched my life as it stands now. Thank you so much.
It's been spectacular to have you in my life, so thank you so much. And thank you for asking me to do this with you. As you know, when we talk through our tattoo time, I could talk to you for hours. So,
in some ways, I feel like this project is like your wall. It's like I'm collecting the memories and the people that are precious to me in my life through this project and putting them all in a album, like an audio album that is going to remain on the internet.
Which I love.
Can see that. Yeah.
I love. And I mean, culturally, you're a storyteller, right? And you're collecting stories to be able to share for your lifetime as well as for others. So
exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for adding your story to my wall.